Hi, welcome to the 2021 CogX Hybrid Festival. My name is Deborah Carter, and I'm Managing Director of Preparation Tech. Today, I'll be emceeing the research stage. CogX is a global leadership summit and festival of AI and transformational technology, which is addressing the question this year, how do we get the next 10 years right? How can we think about the ethics, consequences, and implications of technology? We've invited CEOs, entrepreneurs, activists, academics, artists, and a lot of other people working on transformational innovation, addressing important challenges. We're delighted to see you here. Please use the platform today and tomorrow. You can see who is online, chat with them, or invite them for a video call, and you can visit a fantastic online exhibition. So explore the agenda. Most of CogX is free to all, so please feel free to invite your network. Our social media hashtag is CogX 2021. We're going to start our session in a moment, but feel free to submit questions throughout the session for Q&A at the end of the session. The research stage is organized with the support of a fabulous group of partners. We've got the Alan Turing Institute, which is the National Institute for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence in the UK. We've got Springer Nature, which is a global publisher that helps authors to share their discoveries. And we have Digital Catapult, the UK's leading agency for the early adoption of advanced digital technologies. We're super excited about our program, and I'm looking forward to all of the sessions. I'm going to hand off now to Andreas Alexiou, who is with Digital Catapult.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the research stage. Delighted to be here. Thank you for the intro, Deborah. And yeah, exciting to open up this stage today. We have two guests today joining me to discuss a very interesting topic, which is how can we actually get public funding, how to tap into the research and innovation agendas of the governments and understand how to better apply to these grants. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed CogX so far. If you are interested in this session, you probably have thought of applying to these government grants, so you will be hearing from us. In the next 30 minutes or so, we will dive into also the current trends, some of the practicalities, and how to win and increase your chances of winning these very competitive proposals. So I will start with a short intro about myself, and then I'll hand over to our guests. I come from a mixed background. I have always remained interested in innovation. I have worked for a corporate innovation team. I have my own startup for a few years. I've done a bit of innovation consultancy, and now I'm working for Digital Catapult. For those of you who don't know, Digital Catapult is the leading UK digital technologies center. So we are a non-for-profit technology organization funded by the UK government, and we help increase the adoption of digital technologies across the economy, helping smaller businesses experiment and trial with new technologies, but also big corporates, explaining to them and demystifying and de-risking innovation for them. And I work in the collaborative research team, which is the team that looks after grants and other ways of public funding for us to be able to better collaborate and do innovation ourselves with other parties. So our first panel guest today is Sylvia Boye, who has worked in the research and innovation space for over 12 years. Thank you, Sylvia, for joining us. I'll hand over to you to say a few words. And yeah, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. First of all, thank you for the invitation in this very interesting event. I'm really delighted to be here to discuss this important topic with you. My name is Sylvia Boye, and currently I work for Ingegneria Informatica. I am an innovation manager working in the research and development department. My experience since 20 years is relating to the media sectors, cultural, and in the last period also approaches a new thematic that is really relevant in this period. It is circular economy and Green Deal. My experience, I have a very great experience in preparing a proposal, in discovery interesting funding opportunities. I have a lot of connection with a very strong network with relevant partners that has different competencies, and I always try to put them together. I have to say that even if in this period there is a very high competition in this kind of funding opportunities, but we are quite successful due to our great experience and a long experience in how to apply a proposal. To prepare a proposal, it's a job. And we are really glad to share our know-how here with you to discuss about these interesting issues relating to innovation, relating on any kind of priorities that has been set out in Europe, but in all the European countries. And this is due also for the, unfortunately, this period, that is this COVID pandemic has a little bit influencing the priorities of the funding bodies. Then we will have the opportunity to discuss later on about all these relevant issues.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you for joining today. And our second panelist is Guy Gadney. He's co-founder and CEO of Charisma.ai, and he has been an entrepreneur most of his recent professional life, having also led the previous company to successful acquisition. But Guy, over to you for your intro, please.
Thanks, Andreas. Welcome, everyone. Really good to be here today. I think today, what we're looking to cover is a little bit of the sort of tips and tricks about how to uncover and apply for a lot of these public funds from a perspective, from my perspective and our perspective as Charisma, as a small to medium enterprise, how to get really good ideas out there. As Sylvia said, it's been a challenging couple of years with the pandemic, but equally that's also put a lot of emphasis onto public funding, where maybe private funding has held back a bit over the last year. So I think looking back for a year, there's been really important focus that we've needed to take on these sorts of public funding for innovation. But then looking forward, all nations around the world, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the climate crisis and many other things, are starting to look slightly more, to the future and invest in things which are going to make a significant change. So for that reason, we think it's a really exciting partnership. It's very different sort of gear from a company perspective. Our gears are very fast and short term, and research sometimes is very much the longer term. But I think from our perspective, we'll talk about a little bit more. The combination of the two is a powerful combination in collaboration with other partners that we wouldn't normally meet. So excited to be here today.
Thank you, Guy. Brilliant. I think that takes us actually to digging into the conversation, and it's very good to see that we have different perspectives here today. So we have obviously Silvia, who is representing a big technology organization. We have Guy, who is representing more the medium and small organization that has different timelines and different resources. And then we have myself, who represents a non-for-profit research center. So we'll see how the different perspectives come into play and how we actually need to all work together to put these winning bids. So that takes us to our first question that you both were sort of alluding to already, which is, what are those mega trends and what is the macroeconomic scenario that is driving the innovation agenda. So what is in the government's agenda, to repeat for a better word, and so how do you see the COVID is influencing that? How do you see that the Green Deal is also influencing that? But there are other things, and here it's important to mention that we're not only covering the UK, we're also covering the European agenda, because it's actually a very good outcome that the UK is now associated to the upcoming program from the EU called Horizon Europe. So for anyone out there that is thinking of applying to this, I will strongly encourage that, because the UK again is associated and is an eligible country for the EU funds. So yeah, let's start with understanding from your experience. I'll start with Sylvia. What are some of those trends, and what is the types of things that are influencing the types of calls and the types of funding requirements, if you may?
Yes, sure. I would start describing the umbrella of the priorities of the European Commission. You have to say this priority has been discussed a lot, and the evidence is that the final work program has not been issued. It should be issued in April, then in May, then in June. So there is a lot of discussion also internally to the European Commission to understand which are the priorities and where they need to allocate and to distribute the funding. The European Commission has defined 6 clusters, going for the health, cultural and creative industry, inclusive societies, digital industries, climate, energies, food, environment, and civil security for the societies. These are the main pillars. But I would like to focus what, according to the agenda and according also to our experience, I would like to underline 3 main trends that are really relevant and where probably there are more funds than in other topic. I would mention the Green Deal, as already Andrea mentioned. I would mention the preserving democracy and the digital innovation. Relating to the Green Deal, there is this Green Deal plan that within 2050 we should reach not emission of greenhouse gases. So this is a very big challenge. And all the topic in the Green Deal, that there are 8 main topics going from energy saving for circular economy, climate, pollution, etc., etc. The goal that they want to reach is that improve the economic growth that should be decoupled from the resource reuse. Then this is more linked to the inclusion in societies. No person, no place is left behind, because the main challenges here is to fight against the climate change and the environmental degradation. There, in the Horizon 20 Europe, in the last call just a few months ago, there have been very competitive calls, and more than 1 billion was dedicated to this call. So this is an evidence how the Commission believes and how Europe believes around this Green Deal topic. And also at national level, I'm talking general national level, I am Italian, so I better know the Italian situation, but also in the recovery fund, they asked that the 40% of the resources should be allocated to the Green Deal, because this will affect our sustainable future. The second one is preserving democracies. This is a very important issue, because democracies should belong to everyone. And we need to be sure that all people can get the same opportunities, the same information. And one of the most hot topic in this direction is the disinformation. We have experienced in this period, also in the pandemic period, that a lot of disinformation has been spread out. And this is something that will affect all the sectors, affect the politics, affect the health, affect how people can take the right decision on what to do. This information is not only a technical topic, because now there are a lot of funds in order to create the tools and solutions to support and facilitate the discovery of fake news and disinformation. But it is also a social problem, because even if you have technologies in order to do content verification, news verification, what is important, what the users perceived. Because sometimes, according to some bias, the users is not ready to have a clear idea on what information is for. He believes on what he wants to believe. So we are facing a lot also on these cognitive and psychological sides, because we need to understand the user behavior on how they react to a certain information. And now one of the main challenges that also the European Community is funding is try to understand how the media companies has to provide information in order to be more engaging to people. We know that fake news are more appealing than the trusted news, because there are these disruptive news that people likes to believe to this information. And also the propagation of this information is much, much faster than a trusted news. So now it's important not only to have the technologies that can support the journalists in provide the right information, but to have also methodologies and a new approach on how to deliver information that can be appealing as fake news. This is a very big challenge, and we are working on that. There are a lot of sectors that are really interesting in this information, and this is one of the main important topics relating to preserving democracy. The last one is the digital innovation. Digital innovation is looking for European sovereignty, relating to specific point to the data and to the services. We note that the data is a very important topic, because it's not easy to retrieve data, to collect data, to have access to data. Very often data, especially user data, does not belong to Europe, but unfortunately belongs or are exploited by the global player. And this is a very tricky point, because Europe has to be the owner of the European data. And this is another challenge that in Europe, but also at country level, has to be studied, and we need to find a solution in how to have access to data, to use data in the correct way, to make users aware on how their data are used. Then the other part are the services. Services that has to be innovative. We need to have novel services. And the main technologies that are on top of the research are, of course, artificial intelligence, because this technology is really important and can be applied in any sectors. Big data, again, data is important. It's not easy to have a big data. A large amount of data in order to be analyzed, in order to be processed, and to extract for this data new knowledge. New knowledge that has to be spread all around Europe, and to be used in the correct way, because also the privacy of the personal data is really important. We need to be sure to protect personal data. Not only that, but to make aware the user on how their personal data are used. The other trend, very important, is the XR. the extended reality. Here we are more looking on the media sectors, but not only the media sectors, because the media has to face with the evolution of media. And it has to be sure the media sectors need to provide new type of content formats, a new type of services that should be more engaging for the user, that should be more interesting, more immersive, and what is important is the interaction with the user. So through the extended reality can be a way to create a new way of distributing, of creating and consuming content. So summarize, this is from my experience from all the agendas at European national level, the main priority, the main hot topic that has to be faced.
Thank you, Sylvia. So good to hear that. And yeah, so there's so much going on, and it's such a big fund and program that lasts for 7 years. So brilliant distillation of all of the mega trends that are driving the calls. I would say that yeah, the message is you will need to understand the government strategies and like be aware of the direction so that you can better align with the scope of the calls. That's really the first requirement when you're looking to apply these grants. If you can actually tick the box and comply with the expected results of the call, then you have better chances of actually succeeding. That takes me to my second question that I'm gonna hand over to Guy for this one, which is more related to what are some of the key elements for winning a proposal. From your experience, what has worked in the past?
Well, I think there's no magic solution here, but as you say, if you look at the sort of the overall megatrends that we were talking about, it's very important that whatever idea is being put forward naturally fits that trend. I would say that, and we've had this maybe once or twice, where we've started writing a bid and then paused and gone, actually, you know what? This fits sort of 90% maybe, but not 100%. And my sense is that it has to hit 100% because that 10% will be, you know, knocked down in a very competitive environment. So that's important. The other thing to think about really is what we think about. You were talking there, Andreas, about checkboxes. And in any application like this, there are the visible checkboxes that are in the application. And then there are the invisible checkboxes, which are just things you need to sort of work out and for yourselves in some ways. And that is where, you know, to have experience of people who may have written these before is very valuable. To engage with the organizations that are running these competitions, because often there is support that those organizations can give through, again, speaking from the UK, from Innovate UK's perspective and KTN. But also, I think what we're seeing as a slight change in the trend in these is that as you're looking at the mega trends and a particular project that may be around the Green Deal, that as companies, we're being asked now to provide our own strategies. You know, what as an answer to a question, you know, what is our ethics in AI strategy, and show that, you know, what have we done when we're looking at data sets and unconscious bias in data sets or in AI and ethics. If we're looking at any application, how are we net zero from an environmental perspective? How are we supporting the climate emergency? How are we addressing that? And having that as a strategy for a project which may be nothing to do with that, but is now one of the core questions. So those pillars work in both ways. I think one is that they are the often they are the good sources of funding if you're looking for projects in those specific areas, in the areas that Sylvia outlined. But also, as we are going into any form of innovation funding, as companies, we need to be able to show how in our own DNA, in our own company strategies, we're living and breathing those projects as well. I mean, I think it would be, naturally inconsistent if you were putting in an application around net zero or Green Deal, and you're a company that's a huge emitter of carbon, and you weren't likely to change that strategy. That seems to be the contradiction. So I think those, the visible checkboxes and the invisible checkboxes are something we talk about a lot. But also, as I said, I really think that, in this time we're in now, which has been very reactionary because we have so many urgent things and so many existential crises around, it is important to look at the short term, but we have to have this look at the longer term as well, which is this sort of where this sort of funding tends to engage. So I think it's, as it fits into the political landscape, it's very important, but we are living in times which are going to have enormous ramifications, not only for Europe, but globally, and not only geographically, but politically and socially, across borders. And to be able to make these next steps sensible and sustainable is critical, and I think that's what you're starting to see reflected, thankfully, in a lot of the calls that are out there, and they overlap. I mean, a call that is around digital innovation is no longer something which is around headsets or 3D or whatever. They're cross-cutting into these more into these larger scale societal issues as well.
Brilliant. Yes. Thank you so much, Guy.
May I add something related to that, because Guy did a very clear overview on the situation, and as Guy said, we have not the reply, because otherwise every time we apply, every time we win. So it's a sort of also writing a proposal, it's a job. But the suggestion that I would like to give you is, do not start from the solution, but start from the user need. The users has to be put in the loop at the beginning. They have to design the services with the technical partners and all the stakeholder involved in implementing the solution. So user in the loop and service design is a crucial point. The second one is to be sure that all the competencies needed are included in the constituencies, because now we need to work in collaboration. It should be a multidisciplinary teams, and all of the teams has to discuss together in order to understand each other and then come out with the right solutions. And the innovation can be adopted only if the users are ready to adopt the solutions. Otherwise, we can create fireworks, but nobody knows it or nobody are interested in it. So the problem is not the technologies, and the problem is the users, that the users represent also the market. So these are the two main suggestions that I would like to share with you, because especially in the last period, both at European level and national level, what they are looking for, what already guys said, is for a short-term impact, medium-term, and long-term. So we need to be aware how the market can be ready to adopt the solution, and to know that we need to start from the user needs, the user point of view, and the user are to co-create the services within the technical partners. That's it. Sorry for
No. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. Thank you for adding that point. Yes, I was going to add that, that there is a lot of talk about the writing the bit, and people would think, how do I actually write this? But that's only half the job. There is so much else that needs to happen before that. The consortium needs to come together and agree on what is the concept and who does what, and if those align with their internal strategies, like I was saying. So there is a bit of like legwork, and the base of the pyramid really needs to be a strong foundation, so that the writing of the bit actually happens more efficiently. Let's try to put ourselves in a winning scenario. So if we were actually able to succeed on one bit, and we were actually in the delivery of the project, some projects get to the end and they don't continue. It's difficult for them to find mechanisms to keep going after the funding finishes. I would start with maybe Guy on this one, but from your experience, what would make a project more successful or more able to continue after the funding finishes? What would be those elements that increase the chance of actually becoming a commercial product, or a spin out, or whatever that might be?
So I think in some ways, Sylvia talked about this and started this conversation with putting the user first. I mean, there is nothing more frustrating to me than good research for research perspective, where it's written up and it sits as a paper and nothing happens. It to me, our perspective is more commercial, which is that we want to be creating something for which there is a market need, and that we can show that market need, and we can show how we're going to reach that market. I think that's sort of one of the key pieces in this. So we've been very fortunate with a couple of Innovate grants. One was more theoretical, I suppose. We were looking at the concept of memory in storytelling, in interactive storytelling, which, I describe it as that a book does not remember whether or know whether you're laughing or crying, and neither does a movie or a TV series. But in our interactive world, it does. So what does that, how does that cascade down to a writer and how they write these stories? And that was a piece of work we did with King's College in London, which was fascinating and is now part of the Charisma platform. It's part of what our customers use. It's a key part of this piece. So I think that was an example of sort of collaboration there. And similarly, during COVID, we produced with a company called Creation Theatre an incredibly innovative piece of digital theatre. I mean, I think the most innovative piece of digital theatre that has ever been produced, hand on heart, where we were combining, 3D games engines, we were combining live magic, we were combining isolated actors with green screens, all of these things into a live show, again, funded by Innovate UK. Our goal out of that is then to produce something which we can distribute out to other partners and other theatre makers, because we're not going to suddenly come back from this pandemic where the doors magically open and that's it. We're in a completely non-binary world where the doors may open, but it's going to take a while psychologically for people to go back into physical venues. And by the way, there is a very strong convenience factor that I can see, a fantastic theatre performance of something that I want to see that is in Edinburgh or Milan or New York. And I can now see that. And not only that, but I can see it collaboratively with family members of mine who may be in Australia or Africa or any continent around the world. So I think there is we've this digital revolution and the seismic changes around democracy, around climate emergency, around AI, all of these things were bubbling up and they were about to reach the surface anyway. And then the pandemic has exacerbated those issues and accelerated the conversations and accelerated the need. So my sense is we as I said, we're living in an important time, and it is critical. I would say I would push even that research piece is accelerated further, because we need people who have been looking at these topics to feed what they know out into the marketplace rapidly. And there's as I said, there's great research that's already been done, but we need to get into that development phase and commercialization.
Yeah, there's no point on having the outcomes just piled up somewhere and not actually building products that users can use and are actually answering a need, but at the same time having a wider a positive impact, because that's the whole point as well. What about this is taxpayers' money at the end of the day. So how is this benefiting not only the commercial interest of one company, but the wider society, environment, or the economy? So brilliant points. We're kind of getting to our end of the session. I'll encourage our audience to post any questions if you have. But I have a final question for us to discuss in the meantime, which is around how do you guys see the UK and the EU collaborating with other global players like China and the US on these like research and innovation aspects? And I'm saying collaboration because I could have easily said compete, but I think that's part of the problem. So yeah, I'll hand over to Sylvia to see any thoughts that you might have on that.
Yes, sure. You're right. I don't know if you talk about collaboration or about competition, but in Europe, we have some characteristics, some speciality, I have to say, that are not outside Europe. We are creative. We are people with very good ideas. The only difference with a big player is that a big player usually doesn't come from public funding. The big player has some base on private sectors, and they have a lot of money. They spend a lot, and they can, in a certain case, dominate the market. What we can do, I think it's not worthy, according to my understanding, to compete with this global player, because we do not have the strength, and it's better to focus on our own strength. That is different. What we need to do is to create synergies. We cannot work just one company doing this big solution that can be spread out all over the world and be the big player on the issues. What we can do is to collaborate, to participate, to share our knowledge, our resources, our competencies in doing something new, something different. We cannot copy what they're already doing, but we have to do something that represents our cultural identities. Europe, I think, from this point of view, is on the top. Is the top, because if you look also, I don't want to say names because I don't want to, but we see that other countries that can be considered big players outside Europe are not so creative as us. They have more resources, more money, and they can do what we do in a better way. Not in a better way. They can do what we cannot do alone. So for this point, I think that the clustering to create an ecosystem that together each of the organizations can do their job, but put them together. In this case, 1 + 1, it's not 2. It's much more than 2. So what we need to be convinced that we need to collaborate, and the collaboration doesn't mean to kill the competition. The competition will be there. But if we create something, for instance, I give you an example. There is the one of the topic that will be funded. It's to create a European search engine. This doesn't mean that we need to create the European Google. This means that we need to create a distributed infrastructure that is dedicated to specific target and where you can find information that you cannot find somewhere else. This is one, just to give you an example. So the main key words are collaboration, synergies, don't be afraid about competition, and to be convinced that all together can be much, much stronger than the other global player that was just their own. This is my last suggestion and thought. My thought, of course, but it's something that I experienced during my more than 20 years working in this field.
Awesome.
And if I may just quickly add to this, because I think I'm going to go slightly further, which is that I agree, we should collaborate where we have common values. And it's very important to understand those cultural values and those values. There are, significant political totalitarian regimes around the world who are massive and do not share our values. And I think if we are talking about ethics and we have public funding from the UK government and its values, where ethics is an important piece, that cannot, those collaborations cannot form part of a consortium. They simply cannot, because then the research that is going on in the UK and Europe is funding back into those regimes, which is having an unbelievable negative implication commercially, culturally, not only in their own countries but worldwide. So I think we have a delicate few years ahead, but we must hold our own, hold strong, and be very confident of our own values.
Thank you, Guy and Sylvia. Yeah, very, very interesting. We only tipped our toes in the water here. There is so much to discuss, but we have come to the end of the session. Thank you, Guy and Sylvia, for joining me today. It was such a pleasure to host and chair this panel. For anyone out there that is looking to apply to other collaborative research, get in touch with Digital Catapult. Please link with us and connect with us in different social media channels. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. What we take from this is collaboration, synergies, and Viva Europe. Thanks so much for joining the session, and don't forget to explore the virtual expo booths and networking area during the break. A quick reminder that the next session on the research stage will be about open science, and it will start at 11 o'clock, so see you then.